And boy, do we have a treat. Do we have a treat lined up for you? And I have to say, very special thank you to the Reverend Dr. DUrrell Watkins, because I asked for this personally. And he said yes. So thank you for saying yes. We're about to meet not only the Reverend Dr. DUrrell Watkins, who's the president of the Divine Science Association. That's correct? Federation. Thank you. But he's also really cute. And he is going to introduce us to somebody that I know that you will grow to love. Dragina. Say it for me. Dragvina Scriptura. Give it up for DUrrell Dragvina.
So there was so much chatting and milling about. I thought that was going to go on throughout the whole thing to create a drag bar environment where people are working hard on stage and not a soul is paying attention. So I thought, okay, it's going to be authentic from start to end. I need a what?
You need a bar.
We need a bar?
Yeah.
So, this is the, wow, I think the 4th or 5th time that I've done this. And I forget why I did it. Oh, no, I'll tell you why I did it the first time. Is because they had banned Drag Story Hour in Florida. And so I was forced to do drag in Florida. I mean, I had no choice, right? And so we did, for an Advent series, the 4 weeks of Advent, I did drag Bible study, where I taught the lesson in drag for 4 weeks in a row. There was a group of Catholics that prayed the rosary against us every Wednesday night. They set up camp across the street, and they held up mean signs, and they prayed the rosary against us every week. So that was fun, and then Tim Stewart asked me if I would do this for a church. It wasn't even his church, for a church in Nashville. And so I said, okay, for their Pride event, because it was Gay Pride in Nashville, the year that they had outlawed drag entirely in the state of Tennessee. Now, that same year, a judge intervened, but when I said yes, they had not. And so I had about 6 Floridians with me to pass the hat to bail me out of jail if necessary. That is a true story. That I took people to bankroll my freedom if it were to come to that, because at that moment I was breaking the law. It's just liquid, right? And then I did it as a sermon once in my own church, and then so I thought, well, that's that. Divina Scriptura has done her due, and then here comes Dale calling me. At my mother's house, I was visiting my mother, and at my mother's house, he called my cell phone. But, and he said, would you do this thing? And I said, well, you know what? Things, like, whenever I do it, laws get passed. I mean, it's a bad, and because, in fact, this year in Florida, our gay pride parades in June may be the last for a while. Because unless it is overturned or adjudicated against, pride parades are now illegal starting January 1st in the state of Florida. There will be people who break the law. Rainbow crosswalks are now against the law, which is why people are paying their steps. Since 3 or 4 years ago, it is illegal to do drag in a pride parade. And I don't know if you know this, but pride parades are a commemoration of a drag revolt. And so to ban drag people from their parade is particularly insulting. The Stonewall Inn in June of 1969 is where the whole thing happened. There had been liberative movements, of course, until before that, but that is the day that, because homosexuality was illegal in all states. And in New York City, you had to have 3 items of gender-appropriate attire on you at all times. And I'm saying, so I guess you could say I'm wearing boxer shorts if you'd like to check, but otherwise you had to, and then guy socks, one each foot. Maybe that's, I don't know, but you had to have 3 articles of gender appropriate at all times. So that's it. Now, the mafia would pay police not to bother gay bars, though. So gay bars were safe places. But if you missed a payment, suddenly here comes the police raiding your space. And this was true in Los Angeles, in San Francisco. This was just life for same gender loving people in the 1960s in the United States. So in 1969, one day, it was just the pressure cooker, this is the day that it's not going to happen again. Sure enough, here comes, and it was a filthy little place. It's still around. It's a national monument now. They've cleaned it up. And in those days, they would wash dishes in 1 bowl of water. Not a second bowl, like to rinse them with. No, just 1 bowl of water. And so, yeah, it was like hepatitis central or whatever. But you did what you could. I don't think there was running water in the bar in those days. So it was but it was a place to be and a place to be safe. And so people would do drag performances. And we didn't know as much about gender fluidity in those days. And so a lot of people who could express themselves as performers, as drag queens, were really more and more trying to live that way because they thought that's who they were. Or they knew who they were, the rest of the world didn't know. And so, but now, of course, we know a lot more about gender and sexuality. You wouldn't know it by how some people speak, but we do, honestly, though. And like always, churches and politicians are always behind the science. But we do know a lot more about it. But in those days, drag is how you could resist. Drag is how you could experiment with your feelings about gender complexity. And bars are where that could happen. So in 1969 in June, at the end of June, here comes a raid. And for some reason, this small group of people in the bar said, not tonight. And so someone threw a brick. And there's a lot of legends about who threw that first brick. Stormy Larvere, I always have trouble with her last name, I think is who did it. And she was a drag king. Sometimes she would call herself a butch. I think today they would call themselves non-binary. But in any case, they threw the first brick. And then, of course, the police responded. And that was a revolt that lasted several days. Say revolt, it happened within 3 or 4 blocks. They would push back and forth. I mean, it was pretty contained as revolutions go, but it was a big deal. It was a defiance, and that's in 1969. The following year, 1970, in Los Angeles, was the first Pride Parade commemorating that event. So to tell drag queens that they can't, or try anyone, a lot of people, their first attempt at drag is in a Pride Parade or at a Halloween block party. That's Pride, National Coming Out Day, and Halloween. Those are the 3 high holy days of the LGBTQ community. And those are the times when you try new things, you try things on. And so to tell people that they can't do what their parade is about is particularly insulting. So in the state of Florida now, so what my church does is in the parade, we carry big placards, big signs of drag queens. So we march with them in our hands, but since even some of them are dead, they can't be arrested, and there's no law against carrying signs. So we feature drag queens anyway, but our mayor is gay. He would never make an issue of it. But now there are rules that mayors and sheriffs and county commissioners can be removed by the state if they don't behave. So that's the world I live in. That is the world people in Tennessee live in. That is the world people in Arkansas live in. That is the world people in Texas live in, and so on. In fact, there's a list of states that have historically been not the heroes of their stories, and it's those same states. So Jim Crow, slavery, even Arkansas was one of the sites for the concentration camps for Japanese Americans in World War II. I mean, this is a region that has a complicated karmic history that we haven't dealt with yet, which is why it doesn't get healed. So that's my life. And so part of my ministry, which involves social justice, rooted in what we call justice love, is to push back nonviolently and intelligently against unjust laws, systems, abuses, practices. And so that's how Drag Venus Scripturas work. I'm not a professional, I'm not glamorous, I'm not, I've worn heels just often enough to get a bunion. Now I can't wear them again. It's not even something I do avocationally, but it has. I've done it for fundraisers. I've done it to MC events when they ask, and now I'm doing it just to annoy homophobes, I guess, because I get asked to do it. But it's important to me. My first master's degree is in theater, and my second master's degree, Master of Divinity, has a concentration in theology and the arts. And so a lot of my classes, I would have to defend things artistically. And so I took a class on the Book of Revelation, and my final exam was a performance, where in drag, there's a chapter in Revelation where the writer is talking about this prophetess, this false prophetess, Jezebel, and he's just reading her for filth, and we never hear her side of the story. And so I did a performance that says Jezebel talks back. And so I dressed as Jezebel and made my own arguments, answered his accusations, getting her voice into the story. So I guess that was the birth of the concept of teaching the Bible in a character. And it may be my retirement gig, I don't know. But it is something that has been good for me, and I think for my church, because I've had to research things and discover things that I didn't know before, and not because I know them, other people know them. I don't keep secrets. So I want to do this in three acts. Act 1, I want to tell you about gender play in the Bible. Act 2, I want to, honey, can I get a glass of water? 8, 10, 12, 30 drops. It's not even we're going to do a libation, but I don't have any libation water, but I will do soon. So Act 2 will be a libation, and you'll see why. And then Act 3, there is a Bible story and visual transformation. It's a Bible drag story. I'm not making a story be draggy. I'm telling you a Bible drag story. So, but first things first, gender play in the Bible. This will be quick. Thank you. Thank you so much. I said honey, and I any honey will do. So thank you so much for this. I meant my husband, but my husband, by the way, of 26 years, though Florida only has known about it for 11, because that's when marriage equality in 2015. But we did the first 11 years without anybody's permission, and then but it's been 26 so far. So I'm glad for that blessing in my life. Okay, in the Bible, and I know there's UFBL people here, so I know y'all know the Bible. There are different names for God, and in the English, it just comes out as God, or God Almighty, which is El Shaddai, or Lord with all caps, which is Adonai in place of Yahweh, and so. But there's also one, and it's just called God. Sometimes with all caps, sometimes it's just God, and that though is Elohim. The Hebrew name is Elohim, and Elohim, and it's big, like. A lot of what you read in the Hebrew Bible, especially in the Torah, it's about Elohim. So in the Decalogue, when it says, "Thou shalt not use the name of the Lord your God in vain," that is the name Yahweh. That's not about any time you say anything about any God or any name for God. That is do not use, which is why that word doesn't have vowels in it, so nobody really knows how to say it, and which is why in the Bible they replace it with capital Lord, so because you're not supposed to say it. So I don't have superstition, so I will say it. But I'm just saying it's that is Yahweh. But when it just says God, it is often, or even usually, Elohim. And Elohim is plural. It means gods. It's plural. And in that plurality is gender inclusive. It's y'all boys and girls. That's Elohim. It's those boys and girls. It's us boys and girls. It's gender inclusive and plural. And you don't get that when you just see the English word God. But Elohim is, and even the hymns, that sounds plural, and it is. So Elohim, El Of course, a prefix for God, or sometimes even the name of God. It was a Canaanite god before that. So Elohim is they and plural. So every time you were talking about the God who is first known as Elohim, you were talking about a God that is within God's self, gender inclusive and plural. Their pronouns are they, them. Next, Joseph's multicolored robe is basically a gender performance, because that robe looks like the rainbow-colored, the multicolored gowns, dresses, frocks that princesses would wear, would be given in royal families. And Joseph was, of course, Jacob's favorite child and treated like a prince or princess. And so his favor, his mark of favor is basically to do drag, to wear this prince's costume, that coat of many colors. Jacob and Esau. It is a story about gender performance, at least in the beginning. Esau is rough and manly and ruddy, and he hunts and he fishes and he kills things and he wears smelly furry clothes and he grows a beard and that. And then Jacob is softer, doesn't have a lot of body hair, likes to stay indoors, to keep to his mother's skirts and in the tents and help with cooking. And in fact, he betrays his brother with a stew that he had made, because he knew his brother would be hungry, and so he used the stew to bribe him and do him wrong. But the two boys, one acts like a boy does in that culture, and the other one does not. And Jacob and Esau, Jacob is, of course, the favored one. And often the favored one is the younger, the outcast, the other woman's child, the person that doesn't have all the privilege, or would be expected to win, or that comes out on top usually in society. That's often the one chosen, the favored one, the one born homeless in a barn, who then becomes a refugee in Egypt, who then years later is a criminal and executed for it. That's Jesus. A central figure, the central figure of our biblical narrative. And nothing about his life suggests that he was meant to be born into privilege or power or wealth, and yet he changed the world. And yet he didn't have any unmet needs. And yet he rescued other people from their despair and from their self-loathing and from their loneliness. And so the person that doesn't get the stamp of approval is often the one that shows us everyone gets the stamp of approval. If this is the Son of God, who isn't? If this person is anointed, who isn't? Which is the point of the story. Well, there is Jacob and Esau. It's the Nelly girly one who gets God's stamp of approval. Jesus, when he is very sad, gets a little feminine, at least once, when he's looking at Jerusalem and he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who stoned the prophets, how often I have wanted to gather you to me like a mother hen gathers her chicks." In his moment of brokenness and woundedness, he girls out. "Oh, Jerusalem, how I'd love to be your mother and just take care of you." Jesus sends for a donkey. I don't know why he thinks he needs a donkey. That's how he wants to ride into Jerusalem. He doesn't want to walk in. He wants to ride in on a donkey. And it's street performance, by the way. There's a major parade going on, sponsored by the government, because it's Passover. And so we need to keep people occupied and happy during Passover, because Passover is a festival about people escaping an empire. So let's don't let them celebrate that without some supervision. So the government throws the parade and keeps them gathered and keeps them happy and keeps them drunk and keeps them watched. And on that day, Jesus has an unauthorized parade with palm branches. And instead of a mighty steed with imperial ornaments, he's riding on a little donkey. And people saying, "Blessed is the one who comes in the name of our God," which is Psalm 118. And they're shouting out to him like he's a conquering hero. He's a peasant on a donkey that he borrowed. Well, how did he get that donkey? He sent a couple of his disciples to get it, and he said, you're going to see a guy, and when you see that guy, tell him that I need a donkey, and then you get the donkey and you bring it to me. They find the guy, but what is the guy doing? He's carrying water. In that culture, and in most cultures globally, the water carrier is the woman, the mother, the wife, the grandma, the daughter. The man that they get the donkey from is a man doing women's work. Eve. Everybody okay? Everybody okay? We have water. Eve. Now, of course, it's a myth. But Eve, in the myth, the mythical Eve, would be intersex. Intersex people, of course, there's non-binary, there's transgender, and they're intersex. And those are people who are born with ambiguous genitalia. Maybe on the outside it all looks very much like a boy, but there's also an ovary somewhere that you can't see, or something like that. That you have, and about 1% of the population is intersex. I mean, it's not super uncommon. And so there are people who yes, are transgender. They have some chromosomal or hormonal thing that you can't see that makes their brain think differently about themselves. But there are also organ differences in people who are intersex. Sometimes you can notice and see, sometimes not. So when people say, oh, it's very clear, the science, just follow the science. I wish you would follow the science, because then you would find that gender is super complex and it covers a lot of different experiences. Well, if the story were factual, it's not. It is true. Every word of the Bible is true. Not very much of it is factual. But, right? But let's pretend it happened. This guy falls asleep, has this surgery where a rib is removed, and that rib then is fashioned into a woman. A man has given birth to a woman. And because a man gave birth to the woman, there was no woman to pass on XX chromosome pairs. So you have someone who looks like a woman, is identified as a woman, is called a woman, who does have a Y chromosome. That's intersex. The people who use the Bible as the reason to be mean to people who are different don't realize the irony of their Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Nah, nah, nah. The heroine of their story is intersex. But wait, while you're chewing on that and wondering if you're going to send me a hateful email, or wonder how viciously you're going to complain to Dr. Tim, hold off on it, because I'm going to give you something to add to it. If Eve didn't have a biological mother, Jesus didn't have a biological father. Jesus, for the exact same reason, would be intersex. Now, it's Dr. Tim, neverspeaktomegagain.com. All right, so that's Act 1, gender play, and I'm stopping for the sake of time. Like, not only is there all of this, I could double that, maybe triple that, because the Bible covers about 1,000 years. We used to say 1,500, but we're always rethinking things. Covers 1,000 years, 3 continents, 3 languages, a lot of cultural complexities and evolution, and so it says everything. No, it says nothing. It contains what other people have said, and those people have said everything. And so of course there's a lot of anything once you start looking, because it's the public library. And you can find whatever you're looking for in the public library. But you never say the library says. So when people say the Bible says, no, the Bible doesn't say anything. The library doesn't say anything. It contains stuff that says this, that, or the other thing. So there's all of that gender play in the Bible. Number 2, Act 2. These are just things that I want you to consider or to know or to put away somewhere before we get into the story. First of all, What I hear a lot in my community amongst people who are not melanated, they will turn, I won't say they'll participate in, although so do, they will ignore racism in the community itself. They'll ignore and for sure perpetuate misogyny in our community itself. They will, if they are cisgender, be cruel or at least completely unconcerned about transgender people. That in an oppressed community, there's still way too much of, yes, I'm very concerned about my oppression, but I'm not very concerned about yours, even if ours is related. And so, and I can speak to that because of my community, but that's true cross communities, where, where the reason we have womanist theology is because feminist theology, white women didn't consider black women's experiences enough. And so black women had to create womanists and so on. And the reason, and not only that, but black male theologians, black theology, James Cone, hero, didn't consider women's experience enough. So the black men weren't thinking about black women enough, white women weren't talking about black women enough, so black women said, we don't need y'all, we'll tell you what we're up to. And it's some of the most powerful theological work in the academy right now. So what I want people to know is when I use my privilege to deny my peril, I deny the peril of others. When I use my privilege to deny my peril, I deny the peril of others. Let me give you an example. The bane of my existence when it comes to fundraising, any kind of change, in my church, none of them are here, right? There are, and it's not obviously not us all, and it's not even very many at a time, but there's always one. There's always one. People who have traded on their white male privilege so much that they don't care about other queer experiences. Because, yeah, that they were gay, they could hide in lots of ways or buy acceptance in lots of ways. And so they're completely unconcerned about trans issues because they're not trans. Or they're completely unconcerned about facts that are unique to the lesbian community, like they get breast cancer at a higher rate than straight women. But, I'm a rich guy, and, I'm probably not gonna have daughters or wives, or maybe my mother's already gone or whatever. If it doesn't affect them, it's not important to them, because they've used their privilege to navigate to keep safe. But when you use your privilege to deny your peril, I don't have to worry about that. If somebody at work is mean to me, I'll just fire them. Not everyone has that power. Not everyone has that privilege. So when you use your privilege to deny your own peril, you are denying the peril of others. It's not so bad, as long as I'm making plenty of money. It's not so bad, as long as everybody in my neighborhood gets along. It's not so bad, as long as people listen to me. Well, it's not so bad for you. But other people aren't having that same experience. And so while you just act like it's not so bad because it's not impacting you, you're also denying yourself a reality check. It's not okay for you. You are just able to get away with it because you can fire them or move or hire a good attorney. You have it so that they are leaving you alone, but that is not the same as respecting you. That is not the same as accepting you fully. That is not the same as seeing you as their equal. That is not the same as recognizing the divinity in you. Yes, you have so much money, people either use you or kiss up to you or leave you alone. That is not acceptance. So when you use your privilege to deny your peril, you are denying the peril of others. You are denying that their experience is real and important and should be addressed. Keep that in mind. Part B of that is, we can't heal unacknowledged dis-ease. Our privilege, earned or otherwise, is meant to heal others, not hide. I have a lot of great stuff going on. And that is so that I can help other people. All boats should rise together. That's the way the physics should work. So I should use my stroke of good luck or good fortune or success or reward for my hard work or whatever. I should use that to help someone who's not where I am. Not just to hide. Not just to say I'm okay. Not just to say, well, I'm not like them. I'm one of the good ones of whatever. We can't heal unacknowledged disease. Our privilege, earned or otherwise, is meant to heal others, not hide. Now, about drag performance in particular, the prophet RuPaul has told us, drag doesn't hide who you are, it reveals who you are. And lots of people have become, even as amateurs, who've gotten into drag have said, I've never felt more myself. I've never felt more courageous. I've never felt more alive. I've never felt, some people even said, a drag king once told me, she said, I got in touch with my femininity by playing boys on stage. That by having to think outside the box and try things on, that she felt playing a man sometimes helped her accept her womanhood. And so, yes, so drag isn't about hiding. People say, well, I'm afraid that, some drag person or some trans person is going to come into the bathroom and do mean things to people. And honestly, there's not a case on record anywhere of that ever happening. But that's what we do. We stir up scary stories and then use that as an excuse to be mean to other people, instead of addressing real problems. The people who are saying, oh, we've got to make sure that people can't play certain sports or go into certain bathrooms, those same people are having an abuse scandal a week in their own lives, in their own church, in their own party, in their own job, whatever. They ignore what's really happening by creating a what if and then punishing people for what if. Drag isn't hiding anybody. Nationalism can hide. You can hide behind that. Fundamentalism, you can hide behind that. Piety, you can hide behind that. Puritanism, you can hide behind. Purity culture, you can hide behind that. Drag's not hiding. Drag is putting you in the spotlight. Not only am I this, but I am this on steroids. I am this, turbo boosted. I am this, and so much more. So yes, drag it's not a hiding place. It is what? It reveals you. And it reveals your courage and your creativity and your confidence and so on. And your masculine and feminine energies and the balance of them. And finally, again, the prophet RuPaul. We're all born naked and the rest is drag. All right. I just want to tell you this and have this little moment. Venus Extravaganza, a drag performer and sex worker, New York City, killed in her apartment, 1988. Marsha P. Johnson, a drag performer, early transgender activist. In those days, she called it transsexual. Homeless activist, really on the streets, doing the hard work, found face down, dead in the river, 1992. Miss Wuchi, drag performer, San Antonio, killed 2015. London Star in Texas, killed 2017. Gigi, a Delaware drag queen, killed in 2018. Bianca Davenport, killed in Texas, 2022. La Pancha Cabrancha, killed in Argentina, 2022. Last month, Shael Diamond Sanchez McCrae, murdered in Virginia. These are all drag performers, all killed for being drag performers, or drag activists, or trans people who came out by way of drag. And I chose those 8 names at random. I just want to make sure that it covered a span of years. But trans people who identify as trans are murdered in the dozens every year. Now, I said some silly names, maybe Miss Wuchi, Bianca Davenport, Shael, Diamond Sanchez McCrae. The queens usually, not always, but queens usually choose a name because there's power in naming. There was a guy in the 80s, I remember, he became famous because he changed his name to Luke Sissyfag. And his reason was he'd been called that, and he didn't like being called something that he didn't choose. So he made it his choice. He reclaimed his power. And now, when anybody in an official capacity says his name, they have to say Mr. Sissyfag. There's power in naming. Same thing with the word queer. It used to be an insult until queer people reclaimed it and made it a word of empowerment and healing. It's also an academic study. You can get a degree in it now. So these performers take on a name to say, I'm taking back my power. I'm telling you who I am, and I'm deciding what my life will look like. And for that, many have been killed. And so for those that I've named, and the far too many who go unnamed, I recognize their sacred value. I recognize the God in them. And I recognize the blessings they've given to the world. And so it is. Act 3. I keep looking at my phantom watch. This is where it lives, but not today. Here's the story. The Bible drag story. Once upon a time, Xerxes, Ahasuerus, but Xerxes is Greek and easier to say. Xerxes ruled Persia. And Xerxes calls for his queen Vashti to entertain his guests, his male guests. He wants her to dance for them, some provocative and erotic dance. And she doesn't want to be gawked at, maybe even pawed by these men she doesn't know. So she sends word back, no. And he fires her as his queen and wife. So now he needs a new queen and wife, so he organizes a pageant. All drag queens become queen by way of a pageant, by the way. He organizes a pageant where the most beautiful women in the empire will compete for the position of his new wife and queen. They will compete in a pageant to be a queen. It sounds so familiar in my world. But also, we're told that these women are gathered to compete. We're never told they applied for that. Consent is never even hinted at in the story. But that's how empire works. Esther is one of those women. She's a Jewish orphan who has been raised by her older cousin Mordecai. She's one of the contestants in the pageant to become queen, but she's closeted about her Judaism. She's a Jew. Her religion, her ethnic culture, her history is Jewish, but it's not safe to reveal that. So she, without consent, is forced to be in this pageant, and she's in the closet about who she really is. Now, by the way, in Persian, Esther means star, and she is the star of the story. And in Hebrew, Esther means hidden, and she was hidden in the closet about her Jewish identity. I think that's interesting when names so perfectly fit. Sometimes I think it's just karmic joy, and sometimes I think it's just really good writing. But in either case, Esther is all the things Esther's supposed to be. The women who have been chosen as contestants must undergo a year of training within a harem. It's sort of a concubine finishing school that includes intensive beauty treatments under cosmetic supervision of a eunuch named Hegai, spelled Hegai. I like to think of him as Hegai, but I think it's pronounced Hegai. Esther becomes good friends with Hegai, who helps her with skincare. Behold some of our options. And he teaches her, honestly, teaches her about makeup. Don't worry about that. I can do this in the dark. My underwear may be on backwards, but I can get this right. He helps her with how she dresses, with her frock and shoes and bling. Now, in the best of drag families, one has an assistant. But most artists have to perform on their own. So they have to do quick changes. If they're lucky, there's a bathroom or a changing room or a closet. If not, then it becomes a reverse striptease. If you can't, oh, did they see the girdle? Oh my God, I hope not. Oh, well, anyway.
Didn't take anybody out.
Yeah, if this breaks loose, there goes the front row. But I do suggest if you don't have a skilled assistant, do get you a husband. That helps a lot. So he helped with the makeup and the frog and the jewelry and, oh wait, also the hair. Let's see. I don't know if I want Liza, Farrah, or Miss Green, but I guess we'll try to do with the closest, with Miss Farrah. People online, please be forgiving. I have no mirror, but one does one's best. Oh, wait. I was raised better than to stand up here with no earrings. And I have a lot of respect for y'all. So you even get the boa action. This from the Joanne Worley selection. All right. Basically, a guy is the drag mother of a legendary house who teaches Esther how to slay as a queen. Eunuchs, by the way, were a sexual and gender minority. Eunuchs were sometimes considered a third gender in antiquity. Some cultures expected them to dress in feminized ways. Some expected them to perform specific sexual acts. Eunuchs played a social role that did not fit into a binary. And eunuchs were vilified. They were made to do all kinds of sexual things, and because their bodies had been altered, they could do all kinds of sexual things. And since they could, it was assumed that they did, that they were sexually voracious. Being sexually different made them sexually predatory, the rumor went. In the story of Esther, it is a eunuch who teaches Esther about fashion and makeup, perhaps because Higai has mastered the art of drag in their role of overseeing women in the royal household. In fact, it was standing operating procedure for eunuchs to look after royal women because they couldn't get them pregnant. And in many cases, they were also innately gay, which would protect the women from unwanted advances. So eunuchs, particularly and often gay eunuchs, were the ones you trusted important women with, because that way they'd be safe. It is such a eunuch who teaches Esther how to be more glamorous. It is such a eunuch who teaches her how to win a pageant and how to become a literal queen. Esther is a friend of eunuchs. She's basically raised by them. Esther is a eunuch ally. And let me just say this about allyship. If when the rocks are being thrown at you, or at the person, if you're not getting hit by any of them, you're not an ally. You may be a fan. You may have a good friend who's in that particular group. You may quietly hate that, people are treated badly. But if you're not on the front lines with them, you're not an ally. You're a fan. If you really, and I speak from my own experience, but that is true about women's bodily autonomy. That is true about it is not enough to be non-racist. You must strive to be, or we should strive to be anti-racist. That is true about children's rights. That is true about immigrants, with or without documentation. If we aren't taking our risk for them with them, then we're just fans. And we can't be an ally to everything in the world. I can't be all things to all people. I am just a fan of a lot of kinds of people. But I really think I'm trying to be a trans ally and a feminist ally. I try. It is for those people that I'm trying for to decide how successful I am at it. But a lot of people give themselves the term ally because they like gay people, or they don't have anything against trans people. If you're not taking any of the risk, you're not really an ally. But you can become one. Esther, raised by Mordecai to a certain point, and then by Haggai the rest of the way. Mordecai is her adopted father. Haggai is her adoptive mother. Haggai is not the only eunuch we'll see in the story. In fact, eunuchs are mentioned in every chapter of Esther. Every chapter of the book of Esther has eunuchs in it. And I don't mean, and there were 6 or 7 eunuchs in the room. No, mentioned by name. Just for perspective, God is not mentioned in the book of Esther. God isn't in there. But no fewer than 12 eunuchs are. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is mentioned 19 times in the entire Bible, 34 in the Quran. Eunuchs are mentioned 47 times in the Bible. More than twice the amount of times as Jesus' mother. And 12 of those 47 are in the book of Esther. So if you are gay or lesbian, bisexual or transgender, if you are non-binary or in any way queer identified, if you are a true and supportive ally, if you enjoy drag performance, if you are part of or concerned about any targeted group, Esther is a book for you. Reminding you that just as you are, you have access to divine power. Soon after Esther becomes queen, a villainous man named Haman is appointed viceroy. Haman has enacted a law that says all Jewish people will be killed and their property seized. That's why the queen herself can't tell anyone she's Jewish. Now, nobody knows. She's not out about it. That's how she thinks she can stay alive. Haman builds special gallows for Esther's cousin, Mordecai, to make an example for him, because Haman had snubbed him at some point. But all Jewish people are subject to this. I find out you're Jewish. I accuse you of being Jewish. We've got laws saying it's no good to be Jewish, and you can be punished in the worst ways imaginable. Mordecai sends word through a eunuch messenger, whose name was Hathach, if you care, sends word, and the queen's personal attendant, a eunuch, brings her the message, and the message says, you are in a position to help. For such a time as this, you've risen to this position. Esther doesn't have any political power. And she can be dismissed or even killed on the king's whim. She isn't even allowed to approach the king. She can't even walk into his room without an invitation. But she still has some access to power. She knows his name. She knows where he lives. They're going to cross paths every once in a while. She has access to power that no other Jewish person does. Esther starts a prayer chain and agrees to do what she can and then detach from the outcome. She says, okay, pray with me and I'll pray, and if I get an opportunity, I'll do a thing, but I can't promise anything. She starts a prayer chain, agrees to do what she can, because what God does for us, God does through us, and then she says, I'll detach from the outcome. I'll let God use me, and then I'll let God do what God does. Esther is granted an audience with the king. And so she asks for a banquet. Just a banquet. Oh, by the way, since I have you, can I have a banquet? It was at a banquet that Vashti refused to be objectified. Remember the first queen? And it's now at a banquet that the sharing of time and joy and resources that people will be liberated. It was at a banquet that it all went south, and it's at a banquet that it's going to be healed. Banquets are mentioned 44 times in the Old Testament, and 20 times of those, almost half, are in the book of Esther. Banquets, I would bend over and pick that, but it's the girdle sitch. Esther is granted an audience with the king, and she asked for a banquet. She gets the banquet. Banquets are mentioned all throughout the Bible, and good things happen at banquets. Powerful things happen at banquets. Good things happen at shared tables. Good things happen at parties. Good things happen at conferences. Good things happen when people get together and decide to be of like mind about something important. Church and conferences, though, sometimes don't focus on the important thing, because this is what we hear. Well, I don't come to church to talk about politics. I don't go to conferences to hear about politics. I don't go to family reunions to hear about politics. I don't like politics. Well, but here's the thing. Silence is also political. You're not getting out of it. You're just choosing what way you're being political, by saying something or not saying something. And not saying something is complicity. So when you don't say something, you are saying, I am complicitly okay with the status quo. So you're not being political. In fact, you've chosen a side. Silence is an action, and it has consequences. I don't like politics, but silence is political as well. Are we politically active or politically complicit? That's our choice. We're healing and building one another up. In the story of Mary Magdalene, you'll remember, it's in Luke's gospel. She's exorcised of 7 demons. 7 is completion. She had been thoroughly demonized. She was completely considered demonic, evil, no good, immoral. But it was getting with Jesus and his disciples, a gathering of folk who are enlightened or on a path to enlightenment, people who are sharing, who are getting on the same page about things and moving forward in a positive and loving way. It was getting with Jesus and his gang that Mary was able to release her identity that had been imposed on her. The demonic identity had been imposed on her, and she was able to get rid of that demonization by being in the company of people who are committed to love and truth and divine guidance, and being inclusive of all the expressions of God. We are here to see divinity in one another and see the demons, those lies that have been imposed on us, flee. At her banquet, the king offers Esther any favor she might ask. And so she says that her people have been condemned to death, and she'd like for that genocide to not take place. And the king asks, who has done such a dastardly thing? And Esther points to Haman and says, there's the fiend. And the king storms out in anger. And when he returns, he finds Haman all over Esther. Now, he's just begging her for mercy, but the king thinks he's attacking her. Cut to Haman being hanged on the gallows he built for Mordecai. Though the violence won't appeal to us, the point is that Esther came out and spoke out, and that changed the course of events. If the word has power, then we are making a mistake by not speaking it. She used the power of her voice, the power of her intention, the power of her thought, the power of her word, and that power came to fruition. Now, I doubt if the story is historically factual. For one thing, Persian kings married from a very select group of aristocratic families, not from the winner of a beauty contest. This Persian version of The Bachelor is just super unlikely. But whether there was or wasn't an Esther, the point of the story is that even a seemingly predetermined course can be changed. It's a story that shows that gatherings can be powerful enough to change lives, like the INTA. Well, some years, we have 40, and some years we have 60, and some years we have 20, and every year we meet. How many disciples were there? And yet it changed Mary Magdalene's life. And then because she changed, she became the most faithful disciple. No, don't get into the numbers game and the comparing with other people and comparing with your past and comparing with your dream. What's here? Let's use what we've got. Let's use what we've got. Let's say the word we have. Let's speak the word we know. Let's do what we can. And Esther, who had absolutely no power by worldly means, saved her entire people. In the story, it's a story that shows that gatherings can change lives. It is a story that shows that we can't always know what's going to happen to us, but we always have choices about how we respond to what's going on. And no response is a response. And when we set an intention, when we make a choice, when we act with courage and integrity, mighty forces are released that make every good thing possible. It's a story that shows the importance of allies. It's a story that shows the ability to form families by choice and not be limited by biology. It's a story that shows the importance of working together and of being resilient. It's a story that reminds us when we're ready to come out as whoever we really are, that act of authenticity can bless and even save the lives of others. When you came out as an ally, when you came out as non-binary, when you came out as bisexual, when you came out as a new thought practitioner, when you came out, that wasn't just good for you. That was good for everyone. You becoming your authentic self, your sharing your authentic self, saved somebody somehow. And maybe lots of somebodies. The story of Esther is a story of people who have been discounted, learning that they have access to power. They have access to an omnipotence that no one can take from them. It's a story where drag queens become queen makers, and where drag is shown not to hide who one is, but to reveal who one is. And there's all kinds of drag. It's not just wigs, it's titles. It's not just wigs, it's family relationships. Oh, you're in drag right now. You may be in your new thought drag, you may be in your activist drag, you may be in vacation drag, but you are performing some role by choice right now. And that drag that you're doing isn't limiting you, it's telling us who you are. It's a story, the story of Esther, that shows us that your drag, how you show up, is revealing. Some feathers, some paint, some perfume, and voila, Haggai is a hero. Esther is a hero. Lives are changed, even saved, where women stand up for themselves and their communities. Even Vashti, who doesn't get a big mention, spoke the word no. She didn't know how to change the system, but she knew she didn't have to participate in it. It's a story where the condemned become comrades, where the hated become heroes, where the vision becomes verity. I saw it, and now I live it. As I told you earlier, there are now laws and campaigns and religious movements determined to vilify, demonize, dehumanize, and demoralize drag performers, transgender folk, intersex folk, and non-binary folk, but we know that all folk are God's folk. Each and every one is part of the one. Each, the one all, wearing the wigs. Each of us, the one all, individuating as people who wear costumes and people who don't. People who wear this attitude and people who wear another. People who wear this career and people who wear another other. But it's all God playing endless games of make-believe and dress up and hide and seek. It's all God putting on the makeup and frocks of human experience. But as every wave is the ocean waving, we are each God godding. When people have been demonized, it is our job to cast out demons, that is, to expose the lies. The ocean is water in drag. The wave is the ocean in drag. And when people are told that they aren't good enough, we have the joy and the opportunity and the responsibility to remind them that they are, indeed we all are, God in drag. And so it is. Thank you. We have negative 1 minute left. My plan was to finish like 6 minutes early and then have you talk. If the timekeepers will allow, can people say something or ask something? I'm going to put on timekeeper drag and say yes. So because that was a lot. And so if you need to unburden yourself or to ask for clarification, Reverend Dale's going to let us do it. Do I?
I want to thank you for that Esther delivery, because that is indeed my favorite in the Bible. I've over and over and over and over again, and now you pulled it apart even more. So thank you.
New thought is not antithetical to biblical scholarship. In fact, I think we do it better when we let ourselves.
And I want to thank you for the difference between being a fan and an ally. That is just, I mean, that's going to move with me, and it's going to enter so many of my sermons going forward. And I love the fact that you called it out, which in turn called me out on some of the things that I think I'm an ally about, but I've been busy being a fan and not being an ally. So I need to call myself what I am, or I need to change my behavior.
Yeah, we all do. And I have to admit, with a bit of a tone of apology, that I have a manner of speaking that sometimes sounds more confrontive than I intend. So if I did not mean to call out anybody. Okay. No, I mean, I just get passionate and I say, oh, but I'm like, oh, that may come on a little strong. Good. Yes, ma'am.
I want to affirm what Ricky said, because I have a community that is on the verge of doing deep allyship, but they're still anchored in fandom, and I don't know that they know that that's where they are, that that's where they've located and navigated. And so this will absolutely help to map that onto our community journey, and it's really powerful. And boy, are they going to get a barrel full.
And even, we all have different levels of opportunity and different levels of courage, but it's even just to realize if you have the choice, because nobody has a choice. Some of us, like we wanted to be closeted and we just couldn't. And so if you have the option, like I don't have to be an ally, I want to be, but I don't have to be, that alone is a privilege. So you may have to work your way up to courage to actually be one, but it's first good start is saying, well, I've got it pretty good that it's even a choice for me, because for some people there's no choice. Now, and people in the LGBT community, they have sort of a double bind or yes and. If I am a Chinese kid in an all-white neighborhood, I get to go home to my Chinese parents, presumably. Maybe I was adopted. But presumably, there are people like me who share my religion or my language or my culture or my story, something. So there's a safe place for me. Most gay kids don't have a gay family to go home to. So they're scared and lonely out in the world, and then they're scared and lonely at home. I mean, our kid is different. Our kid is gay. But not everyone has that. And so there's that. So that's a particular sort of challenge for LGBTQ people. But also, there is a challenge for LGBTQ people to step up and be better allies to other kinds of people, because I can pass as straight, but that same Asian kid I was talking about can't pass as non-Asian. And so, again, that if I could, I have an option, I have a privilege that someone else doesn't. And so, it's just empathy. Like, what if I was living that life? How would I like being treated that way? And, golden rule seems to come in handy, which is why it's being legislated against, because it is that powerful. Anyone else?
The epitome of courage, and the next topic is relative to the courage that's going to be needed for leaders who last. And you are a poster child of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for what is seen and unseen, and what you're willing to stand through and grow through and invite us into and about you. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And you've already begun to hear from our next speaker.